The Young and the Restless Spoilers, a poisoned vengeance. Phyllis's relentless quest for justice in the tumultuous world of Genoa City, where secrets and vendettas define the landscape. Few rivalries burn as fiercely as the one between Phyllis and Sharon. After Sharon's controversial exoneration, despite overwhelming evidence that some believed pointed to her guilt, Phyllis could no longer contain the fury that had been simmering deep within her. To Phyllis, Sharon's freedom was an affront not only to justice but to the memory of Heather, whose tragic death had forever stained the lives of those who cared about her. For Phyllis, the balance of justice had been irreparably upset, and she resolved to set it right on her own terms. The unbearable innocence Phyllis's loathing for Sharon was not born overnight. It had festered over years, fueled by heartbreak, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of what Phyllis considered moral retribution. Every time Sharon's name was cleared, every time the legal system declared her free, Phyllis's inner voice screamed that the scales of justice were so out of balance that only one remedy could restore them. In her eyes, Sharon was the living embodiment of impunity, a woman who should have paid the ultimate price for what happened to Heather. In a heated conversation with Nick, Phyllis spared no detail in expressing her conviction. Sharon should have been the one to die, she insisted bitterly, her words laced with venom. To her, every life and every asset of Heather's, lost to a senseless tragedy, demanded justice. The conviction that Sharon had dodged her deserved fate was a poison in itself, a poison that drove Phyllis to the brink. A deadly conspiracy in the shadows. Unbeknownst to many, Sharon had once hatched a dangerous plan of her own, a plan that could have plunged the city into further chaos. In a moment of desperation, under the weight of her own tangled motives, Sharon had brought with her a bottle of poison. Her target was Daniel, and in a twisted logic that blurred the lines between right and wrong, she had even struck Heather, rendering her unconscious in an attempt to cover her tracks. The act was not one of cold-blooded murder, but rather a desperate bid to control a situation spiraling out of her grasp. However, fate intervened in the form of Ian Ward and Jordan. Their sudden appearance at the very moment Sharon had planned her nefarious act upended the carefully orchestrated plot. With their timely intervention, the sinister plan was foiled before it could fully unfold, preventing what might have been the final, irreversible step in a downward spiral that would have transformed Sharon from a beleaguered participant into an outright murderer. And yet, as twisted as it was, this near event remained a hypothetical, a what might have been in the dark corners of conspiracies and regrets. It never truly came to pass, leaving Sharon with her legal innocence intact, a status that, in the eyes of Phyllis, was nothing short of a travesty. Phyllis's plan for personal justice, with Sharon's exoneration ringing in her ears like a grotesque victory for injustice, Phyllis resolved that she could no longer stand idle. The notion of a world where someone like Sharon lived free was unbearable, and Phyllis's mind became a cauldron of meticulously calculated plans. Every detail was considered, every contingency mapped out. In her vision, the final chapter had already been written, a chapter where justice, in its rawest form, would be meted out by her own hand. Phyllis's plan was as elegant as it was deadly. She would poison Sharon. In a symbolic twist of fate, the very method of murder that Sharon had once flirted with would be repurposed as an instrument of retribution. Phyllis believed that by poisoning Sharon, she could restore a semblance of balance to a universe that had long been skewed by injustice. To Phyllis, this was more than personal vengeance. It was a reclaiming of moral authority in a world that had repeatedly failed to deliver it. Every conversation, every furtive glance exchanged in the corridors of power and private meetings, began to revolve around this single, unyielding idea. Phyllis began to sow seeds of dissent, using every opportunity to remind Nick and others in her inner circle that Sharon had not only escaped her due punishment but that she had tainted everything that was once sacred in the pursuit of justice for Heather. She was supposed to be the one, Phyllis would say, her voice trembling with both rage and determination, not Heather. The fragile balance of fate for Sharon, however, the world was a maze of constant threats and unpredictable turns. The near miss of her own dangerous plan, where Ian Ward and Jordan had inadvertently saved the day, had left her with a precarious existence. In one timeline of possibility, had Jordan not appeared, everything would have been irrevocably altered. In that grim scenario, Sharon's transformation from a woman caught in a web of circumstance into a cold-blooded killer would have been complete. But destiny, with all its ironies, had kept that path at bay, leaving Sharon legally unscathed. This divergence from a darker fate only intensified Phyllis's resolve. In her eyes, the miraculous intervention that spared Sharon was nothing more than a loophole in the cosmic ledger, a ledger that she was determined to balance with her own brand of brutal justice. In the labyrinth of her mind, every missed opportunity for retribution was a wound that festered, driving her to plan even more daringly, to consider even more drastic measures. A game of shadows and poison. The impending showdown between Phyllis and Sharon was a game of shadows, a battle where trust was a luxury neither could afford and every move was loaded with lethal intent. Phyllis's determination to see Sharon dead was not merely about settling old scores. It was a crusade to redefine the very notion of justice in a world where legal absolution had proven woefully inadequate. The method was clear, the objective unmistakable: Sharon would die by poison, a fitting end for a woman who had danced too close to the edge of moral ambiguity and had somehow managed to escape the consequences. Yet, beneath the surface of this lethal plan lay layers of complexity. Phyllis knew that in executing her plan, she would be stepping into a moral quagmire from which there was no return. The act of taking a life, even one that she believed was undeserved, was a burden that could consume a person's soul. And still, Phyllis pressed on, her heart steeled by years of accumulated pain and betrayal, convinced that the only way to honor Heather's memory was to ensure that Sharon would never see another sunrise. The uncertain dawn of vengeance. As the days bled into nights in the ever-turbulent corridors of Genoa City, every resident felt the tension mounting. Rumors swirled, alliances shifted, and the specter of a coming confrontation loomed ominously. In hushed tones and secretive glances, the inevitability of Phyllis's plan was discussed. Some whispered that she was a force of nature, unstoppable, remorseless, and destined to carry out her retribution. Others, more sympathetic to the nuances of fate, cautioned that the path of vengeance was fraught with unforeseen consequences, that crossing the line from victim to executioner would forever alter the soul of anyone who dared to tread it. For Sharon, the future remained a fragile tapestry woven with threads of chance and survival. Unbeknownst to her, a storm was gathering, a storm with Phyllis at its helm, ready to unleash a maelstrom of poison and retribution. And for Phyllis, the next chapter in her dark crusade was about to be written in a language of bitter resolve and lethal intent. Epilogue. The price of justice in the shadowed realm of Genoa City, where every injustice calls out for redress and every slight is magnified into a vendetta. The battle between Phyllis and Sharon was more than a personal feud. It was a microcosm of a greater struggle for a moral order that had long since been eroded by deceit and legal technicalities. Phyllis's unyielding demand for justice, no matter how twisted, was a reflection of a world where the lines between right and wrong had blurred into an endless gray. And as she plotted the final act in her quest to see Sharon dead by poison, one truth remained undeniable: in the relentless pursuit of vengeance, the cost is never measured in simple terms. For in this relentless game of shadows, the price of justice is paid in blood, and sometimes, even the victor is left forever haunted by the ghosts of their own making. In the grand tapestry of Genoa City's ongoing drama, one thing is certain: the stakes are higher than ever, and the next move could very well tip the balance between redemption and ruin. As Phyllis prepares to exact her final, fatal justice on Sharon, the city holds its breath, knowing that when the dust finally settles, the echoes of this deadly confrontation will be felt for generations to come. In the shadow of revenge, the struggle for redemption in Genoa City has always been a place where the past and the present collide, and the scars of old wounds often fester into new conflicts. In this tumultuous landscape, Daniel's decision to put his bitterness aside and build a new future with Lucy stands as a beacon of hope, a sign that healing is possible even after deep betrayal. Yet, not all souls are ready or able to move forward. For Phyllis, the memories of wrongs endured have festered into a relentless thirst for vengeance, and her determination to see Sharon pay for the past has plunged her into a vortex of self-destruction. Now, amid swirling emotions and uncertain alliances, Nick finds himself caught between loyalty, anger, and the desperate need to prevent an impending catastrophe. A new beginning for Daniel and Lucy. After years of strife, loss, and heartache, Daniel finally found the strength to let go of his long-held hatred. With Lucy by his side, he embraced a future that promised hope, love, and renewal. Their relationship, built on mutual understanding and resilience, became a testament to the possibility of redemption even in a city where betrayal lurked around every corner. For Daniel, moving on wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about accepting it, learning from it, and refusing to let old wounds dictate the course of his life. Lucy, with her unwavering compassion and gentle wisdom, became his anchor in a sea of lingering pain, inspiring him to look forward rather than dwell on what could never be undone. Phyllis's unyielding quest for vengeance in stark contrast to Daniel's path toward healing. Phyllis remained ensnared in the dark allure of revenge. To her, justice had been denied. The wounds inflicted by Sharon's actions, real or perceived, were too deep to allow for any form of reconciliation. Every slight, every misdeed, had carved an indelible mark on her soul, and now those marks fueled a burning desire to see Sharon punished. In Phyllis's eyes, the notion that Sharon could continue to walk free was not only an injustice to Heather's memory but a personal affront that demanded a drastic response. Phyllis's descent into the depths of retribution was as horrifying as it was inevitable. She spent sleepless nights planning, poring over every detail and every opportunity to exact her own brand of justice. In her world, there was no room for mercy. The scales of accountability had been irrevocably tipped in favor of vengeance, and only the fall of Sharon could restore balance. The more Phyllis embraced her dark mission, the further she drifted from the possibility of redemption. Her soul, once capable of empathy and forgiveness, was now marred by bitterness and an unquenchable thirst for retribution. Nick's turmoil, between loyalty and desperation. Observing this internal conflict, Nick was gripped by an overwhelming sense of dread. Aware of Sharon's precarious position and the dangerous path Phyllis was treading, Nick's concern grew by the day. His anger was not directed at Sharon, who, despite everything, had managed to avoid the full brunt of her past sins, but at the relentless fury consuming Phyllis. Nick knew that if Phyllis were allowed to act on her vengeful impulses, the consequences could be catastrophic. Sharon, despite her controversial past and the lingering shadows of doubt, was in danger of becoming collateral in a battle that had nothing to do with the pursuit of true justice. Nick resolved to keep a close watch on Phyllis, determined to intercept her before she crossed a line from which there might be no return. Yet, the challenge was formidable. Phyllis's rage was as unpredictable as it was powerful, and the intricate network of emotions that fueled her vendetta often clouded her judgment. Every conversation, every meeting, was a potential flashpoint where her plans might gain momentum. Nick's task was not only to monitor her actions but to find a way to reach the person he once knew, a person capable of recognizing that the cycle of hatred and revenge would ultimately lead to ruin. The dilemma of intervention. The question that haunted Nick was both simple and complex. Could he convince Phyllis to let go of her relentless pursuit of vengeance? More importantly, would she even listen? Nick recalled a time when Phyllis's counsel had been sought after for its wisdom, when her insights were tempered by compassion as much as by experience. Now, that same intellect was obscured by an obsession that left little room for reason. Every word she spoke carried the weight of her fury, and every plan she devised was colored by a determination to see Sharon suffer. Nick knew that any intervention would have to be handled delicately. A harsh rebuke or an outright confrontation might only fan the flames of Phyllis's anger further. Instead, he planned to approach her with empathy, a reminder of who she once was and the promise of a life free from the chains of past grievances. Yet, the task was daunting. Years of accumulated hurt and bitterness do not simply vanish with a few well-chosen words. It would require a deep, heartfelt appeal to the better nature hidden beneath layers of pain. A city poised on the edge. Genoa City, with its perpetual drama and shifting alliances, was no stranger to turmoil. Yet, the current conflict carried a particular weight. The juxtaposition of Daniel's healing journey with Phyllis's descent into vengeance painted a stark picture of the divergent paths that lives in this city could take. While some chose to forgive and move forward, others were doomed to relive their sorrows in a cycle of retribution. The stakes were high. not only for the individuals involved but for the moral fabric of a community already frayed by endless betrayals and relentless ambition. Every decision, every act of revenge, had a ripple effect. The potential fallout from Phyllis's actions extended beyond personal vendettas. It threatened to destabilize the delicate balance that held together relationships, alliances, and even entire families. Nick understood that the danger was not merely that Sharon might be harmed, but that the spirit of vengeance could set off a chain reaction leading to further chaos and suffering. In a world where redemption seemed possible for some and out of reach for others, the risk was that one misstep could shatter whatever fragile hope remained. The battle for the future. As Nick continued his vigil, he grappled with his own conflicted emotions. He felt anger. An anger born from witnessing the destruction that unchecked hatred could wreak. At the same time, he was driven by a deep-seated need to protect those who, despite their flaws, still had a chance at a better future. His monitoring of Phyllis was not an act of control but a desperate effort to prevent irreversible tragedy. Every decision he made, every move he contemplated, was fueled by the hope that somehow, amidst the darkness, light could prevail. Nick's internal struggle epitomized the broader conflict at the heart of Genoa City. On one side stood the possibility of renewal and redemption, embodied by Daniel's determination to move forward with Lucy. On the other, the abyss of revenge beckoned, threatening to drag even the strongest souls into its depths. The battle was not just for Sharon's fate or Phyllis's soul, it was for the very essence of what it meant to be human in a world where every action carried the potential to either heal or harm. An uncertain resolution. The question that loomed large was whether Phyllis, overwhelmed by her own fury, could be reached by someone who cared enough to risk everything for her sake. Would Nick's persistent watchfulness and heartfelt interventions be enough to pull her back from the brink? Or was she destined to remain lost in the labyrinth of her own vengeful desires, a tragic figure whose pain blinded her to the possibility of forgiveness? In the quiet moments between the chaos of everyday life in Genoa City, Nick found himself pondering these questions, each more haunting than the last. The path to redemption was never straightforward, and the scars of the past did not fade easily. Yet, within him burned the hope that even the most hardened hearts could be softened by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As Daniel and Lucy embarked on a journey toward healing and hope, Nick vowed to stand as a silent guardian. A reminder that even in the midst of relentless anger and seething revenge, the choice to forgive and move forward was still within reach. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and the ever-present danger of further discord, but Nick believed that somewhere beneath the layers of pain, Phyllis could rediscover the strength to let go. Epilogue, a glimmer of hope amidst darkness. In a city defined by its dramatic highs and devastating lows, the struggle between vengeance and redemption is a never-ending battle. For Daniel, life with Lucy offered a glimpse of what could be, a future where wounds could heal and love might mend even the deepest fractures. For Phyllis, however, the lure of revenge was a dangerous siren song, one that threatened to consume her entirely if left unchecked. Nick's vigilance and determination to intervene served as a beacon of hope in these troubled times. Though the outcome remained uncertain, his commitment to safeguarding the future of those he cared about underscored a fundamental truth, that even in a world as volatile as Genoa City, there is always the possibility of change. With every step, Nick reminded himself, and those around him, that sometimes the hardest battles fought are the ones waged within our own hearts. As the city moved forward, balancing on the knife's edge between old grudges and new beginnings, one thing was clear: the path to true healing is paved not with the ashes of revenge, but with the courage to forgive. And in that hope, even the most tormented soul can find a way back to the light.